Hello viewers, today for repair we have a Holmes stand fan. This is model number HSF1610A, and it is unfortunately made in China, which is probably why it quit. This is a friend's fan. He asked if I could see if I could get it going again. It seems like the bearings have locked up. Go ahead and plug this in here and see what happens. It moves ever so slowly, and I can hear a hum out of the motor, but it's not moving the way that it should be. And of course they had to put a screw down there at the bottom for some reason, just to make it that much more difficult to get it apart. It's a very small screw, and it's rusted. Completely unnecessary. It's not, I mean, it's stiff, but it's not that stiff. Well, that wasn't too hard. But that's not the proper way to fix it, so oops, oh dear, it's a freak show already. No surprise here. Let's get this apart and see if we can oil it properly so that it runs hopefully for a couple more years. That's quite dusty in there. I'm going to remove this from the stand so that we can work on it on the table. It's certainly much more practical. And we're going to have 4 screws to pull the front cover off. Okay, so we have some cleaning to do. The oscillation knob seems like it should just pull off. Okay, and then we have one final screw on the back, and that should release the motor housing. Well, in this thing's defense, it ran quite a few hours before it had a problem. Okay, so let's get our used ticker towels out. Actually, this is dusty enough. I think I'll get the vacuum out. Okay, now we have a chance of not making a complete and total mess of the studio. Let's get into this motor. First thing we're going to do is remove these 3 screws on the back of the oscillating mechanism. Now it's quiet. Okay, so with the oscillation mechanism removed, oh, that's interesting. So there's all dried up lubricant in there that's coming out of the bearing and getting into the oscillator there. Now I can see why that was locking up. Okay, so let's continue into the motor. We have 4 more screws to go. Alright, now we should be ready to split this apart. Actually, there's one more thing we got to do. We have to get this, whatever this piece is called, I don't really know. We got to get that out of there. And the way we do that is we take, I have a piece of granite. Well, where it went, here it is. It's in this box, I think. Yep, I take this piece of granite. And I put this under here like this, and it's kind of short, so I'm going to take this and put that like that, and then we're going to tap this out. Maybe easier to go from the other side. Looks like that side's smaller. Okay, that's out. Now there should be nothing preventing us from pulling the shaft through the bearing. This isn't sliding out very well, so I'm going to put some detergent oil on here and see if I can clean this up a little bit. It doesn't look like it's rusted, so I didn't think that we would have to do this, but we may have to. Okay, so now we have the shaft out, and you can see what transpired here is the lubrication dried up on the rear part of the shaft here. This is all sticky now, and that's why we're having a problem, and it was starting to transpire on the front as well. I suspect the inside of the bearing looks the same way. I don't know if this will get into the camera correctly, but it does. Come on, camera, focus. Yeah, the inside of the bearing looks the same way. So we're going to have to clean out the bearings. We're going to clean the shaft. So we'll start with that. I have a newer ticker towel here, which we'll begin the cleaning with. It's going to take some effort to get all this lubricant off of there. We got a thrust washer, which I'll take off, and that's it. Okay, so I'm going to take some more detergent oil, and I'll put this on here. I'm going to put it back in the bearing, and we'll let this work around a little bit. Okay, and now we'll clean that off. Now this, really this should be spun on a lathe and clean this off completely, but I don't have that kind of equipment here at the moment, so we're not going to do that. But you can see now it's a shiny surface again, and it'll work just fine. Okay, now we have to get the bearing itself cleaned out as well. And this is a little bit less easy. You can't really get a good amount of force on it to clean it. And we also need to clean this surface here, because this is where the thrust washer will ride against it, and so that needs to be cleaned and lubricated as well. Okay, so this bearing is looking pretty clean now. Some kind of a bronze composite metal it's constructed of, but it's clean. And the shaft is not the greatest. Can try to do the oil again and see if that'll clean up a little bit more. But regardless, you can see it's spinning freely now, so we'll be okay. Now we'll move on to the front bearing, which is a little bit more difficult because it's attached here. I don't know how to detach. Oh, before we move on, we got to clean this thrust washer too, because that's going to be all junked up with that old lubricant too. I don't know why this is happening. It's almost like they put some kind of a detergent lubricant in there. And because this is a typical behavior of detergent lubricant, it cleans the bearing and the shaft, and then it turns into a junky, kind of sticky, gummed up material. They shouldn't have put detergent oil in here. I can't imagine that's what transpired, but I don't know, maybe it's just a really cheap oil and it didn't hold up. Okay, so now we're going to clean the thrust washer from the front. And we'll clean the shaft, so I'm going to put some oil on here. Slide this back in here. Oh, that is a separate piece. Okay. So this is supposed to be free, and this is locked up on the back here. It's almost as if it got really hot and it kind of welded itself to the previous component there. Okay, so that revealed even more of that old dried up sticky oil. So let's take a moment to go back and clean this up again. And I'm going to clean this as well, because this should be able to spin freely. Okay, that's much better now, it's not sticky. So let's clean the front one too. Okay, that should suffice. And now we'll clean the bearing out. Okay, so that's pretty clean now. So I'm going to go through here and get some of the dust out of here, get the dust off of the stator, and then we'll put this back together and lubricate it. Now we're going to lubricate and reassemble. We can use two kinds of oil here. We can use the Zoom spout, This is specifically for electric motors. Or we can use the 3-in-1, the blue can, not the black can, the blue can, because as we've discussed before, it's for fans. So I'm going to use the zoom spout in this case because I have more of it on hand. And what we're going to do is we're going to put oil into the bearing here. We're going to put it in this foam surround. Now I think what happens is a lot of manufacturers are too cheap and they don't put oil in the foam surround, and so what happens is it dries up really quickly from the heat. So we're going to put it all in this within the foam here in hopes that the oil will hold for a while longer. Okay, and we'll do that on the front as well. Okay, now we'll put some oil on the shaft. Oh, the shaft's a little dusty still. We'll clean it off too. Okay, the shaft is clean. I'm going to put some oil on the shaft. Not a lot. And then I'm going to put these thrust washers back on. And you can see they're moving freely, which is how it's supposed to be. Okay, we'll do the same thing on the front. Now I just noticed we're going to have a problem here because I wasn't being very careful. I didn't notice which way this came out of here. If it goes in the wrong way, it's going to spin backwards. I think it's going to go in like this. So we're going to try that. If need be, I'll just open it up and put it in the other way. Okay, so I'm going to put some more oil on here, and not that much, just enough so that this slides in with ease. And I'll slide this through. Okay, and now we'll put the back on. And we want to try to avoid having this gear scrape up against the bearing because it'll get all sorts of junk in the bearing. Inevitable, something will get in there, but we'll try to minimize that. Okay, so now the motor is back together. Something's not right here, unless this moves around. I think I goofed this up because, yeah, I put the shaft in wrong. No problem, we'll just take it out and fix it. It should be like this, I think. You know what? I don't know. I don't know which way it's supposed to go now. We have a 50% chance of getting it right. I'm going to go with it goes like this because the wire feels like it sits naturally that way. You got to be very careful with these windings because they're not made like they used to be. These are very delicate, and even the plastic components can scratch them, and then you get continuity issues. Okay, that looks more right. Okay, so now let's put the screws back in. I'm going to go wash my hands first because I hate when the tools get all slimy. Okay, so we have 4 screws, 4 washers, and 4 nuts. Screw, lock washer, and then the nut. Going to put them all in relatively loosely, and then we'll torque them afterwards once they're all in. Okay, now these screws do not have to go very tight. But we want them to be even. Okay, before we go any further, let's stop and check it to make sure that the rotation is correct. It should spin in this direction. It is, so the rotation is correct. Alright, now the oscillation gearbox, looks like there's plenty of lubricant on that gear, so I'm not going to mess with that. Just put this back on. Before I put that back on, I'm going to take a couple drops of oil and put them into the bearing here. Okay, I'll do the same thing with the front. Okay, and now to align the bearing, I'm going to take a screwdriver and strike the shaft a couple times. It's going real freely now. Okay, good. So we're going to put the oscillation back on. Okay, so that's that. The motor is repaired. I'll check the alignment one more time. Alignment seems to be pretty good. We have to put this back in place. Okay, now we'll just gently tap that down. Okay. And that's that. The motor is ready to go. So now that that's working, I will go ahead and clean the other components. I cleaned the plastic components. I got some staining on the inside, but all the dust is out of there, and that's what matters, so the air can flow through. So let's put this back on. Oh, I goofed up here. This cord is supposed to be held in by this screw. And it's actually quite important to keep it away from the metal there that can cut into it after a while. Okay, so we have this screw in the back. It's not aligned correctly at all. Now it's clean and the air can flow through there to keep the motor cool. This is kind of having a problem. It should be easy enough to fix. Okay, now we'll put the rear guard on. This is another thing you don't want to go too tight with because it's only plastic threads. Blade cleaned up pretty good. And this is reverse threaded, so this is going to be turned to the left to tighten it. Spinning very freely now. I guess I'll put this screw back in here at the bottom. I kind of have an objection to this, but I'll put it back. Okay, now we can test it. How much of a difference in the speeds. Test the oscillations. They appear to be working. Okay, it's working quite nicely now.